Who's actually going to get the most out of a 12-inch pro-grade loudspeaker like the JBL AM7212/95? And who would be better off putting their money into a smaller PA or a powered mixer instead? If you're on the fence about shelling out a few $100s for a full-range two-way cabinet, you're probably wondering whether the price tag translates into real-world benefit or just a glossy spec sheet. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. And in the next few minutes I'm going to walk through the everyday scenarios that make this speaker a solid choice or a costly misstep. Let's start with the kind of venues where the AM7212 really shines. I've spent a lot of time setting up gear for community theater productions, small wedding receptions, and weekend DJ gigs. In those situations you need a speaker that can fill a room of 150,200 people without sounding thin, yet you also need something you can actually move around on a rolling cage. The 12-inch low-frequency driver paired with the 2-inch compression driver gives a decent low-end punch, enough to feel the bass in a church hall without needing a separate subwoofer. The Waveguide design is where JBL's engineering shows up. The progressive transition helps keep the high frequencies focused, so you don't get that harsh screech that cheap full-range cabinets often produce when you crank the treble. In practice, I've noticed a smoother vocal presence on stage productions, and the piano's upper register stays clear even when the kick drum hits. That said, the speaker isn't a magic bullet for every setup. The cabinet is a passive unit, which means you still need an external amplifier that can handle the 8-ohm or 4-ohm biamp configuration if you want to split the power between the low and high drivers. For someone who expects a plug-and-play powered speaker, that extra amp requirement can be a hidden cost. I've seen a few first-time buyers try to run the AM7212 off a small 300-watt mixer's built-in power stage, only to end up with distortion at moderate volumes. The lesson here is, if you don't already own a decent PA amp, factor in that additional expense before you decide it's a good deal. Who should buy this? If you're a semi-professional musician, a freelance sound engineer, or a venue manager who needs a reliable, full-range source for speech, live music, or even DJ sets, the AM7212 checks a lot of boxes. Its rotatable waveguide lets you flip between vertical and horizontal coverage, which is a subtle but useful feature when you're dealing with irregular room shapes. For example, I once set up a rectangular community hall where the audience sat in a long row. Rotating the waveguide to a horizontal pattern helped keep the sound even across the width without adding extra speakers. The biamp switchable option is another practical advantage. When you have a quality amp that can drive each driver separately, you squeeze out a bit more headroom and cleaner mids, which matters for vocal-centric gigs. On the flip side, casual hobbyists who only need a speaker for a bedroom studio or a small backyard party might be overpaying. A compact powered speaker or a budget passive two-way with a built-in amp would likely meet their needs at a fraction of the cost. Also, the cabinet's size and weight around 30 kg means it's not the best fit for a backpack touring musician who needs to haul gear on a bike or in a cramped car. If portability is a priority, you'll probably appreciate a lighter, powered alternative. Now let's talk about the practical strengths that actually affect your day-to-day use. First, the driver pairing gives a balanced frequency response without requiring a separate sub. In a typical church rehearsal space, I could set the low-frequency gain around 0 dB, and the room still felt full when the drum kit hit its lower toms. Second, the waveguide's pattern control reduces lobing, that uneven distribution of sound that can leave corners dead. In a rectangular banquet hall I set up for a wedding, the sound stayed consistent from the front of the room all the way to the back, which saved me from adding delay speakers. Third, the ability to switch between biamp and passive operation gives flexibility. If you're on a budget and only have a single-channel amp, you can run it passively. If you later upgrade, you just flip a switch and start feeding the drivers separately. Weaknesses tend to surface when you push the speaker to its limits. The 12-inch low-frequency driver, while capable, can start to strain if you demand deep, sustained sub-bass. Think a heavy EDM set with 60 Hz kicks. In those moments the cone can lose definition, and you'll hear a muddy quality. That's why many clubs that specialize in dance music still opt for a dedicated subwoofer. Also, because the cabinet is passive, you need to be careful with amp matching. An underpowered amp will clip the highs, while an overdriven amp can overheat the drivers, especially in hot venues. I've seen a few users report the need to add a protective limiter in their signal chain to keep things safe. 1.